Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of StarCraft 2 Team Strategy. In this edition we're going to be looking at a Terran and Protoss team and doing tank pushes. In the first game there are no Zergs. It's actually a mirror match, in which case there's a Terran and Protoss on each team. But in the second game I'm going to show you what you can do against, say, a 15 hatch if you don't want to do Marauder Hellion, and you want to make sure you have an observer out in case there's DTs. But in this first game, we're going to do a little bit more of a delayed push. Rather than just doing tanks and immortals, we're going to end up doing tanks and colossus as well. And it's partly in response to a large amount of bio from the Terran player on the other team, which you'll end up seeing in a little bit here. So once again, just like any other games I've showed you, if I'm Protoss, I always scout on 9 after I place my pylon down. And this is to make sure that, as you can see, they've almost blocked this off already. So, for instance, if this pylon was placed one spot different, they would have been able to deny all of their scouting information to us, and then at that point I'm forced to go a robo early, and they might end up just doing a 4-gate as a result. So, it's always a good idea to try and scout real early, just so you can get as much information as you can. And I'm basically just going to keep running my probe around in here, but I'm not able to see a whole lot of them. Yeah, they got one gas for each of them, and they have a barracks and a gateway, but nothing's upgraded, and I'm not able to see a whole lot more than that. So, as my default response to seeing basically just a standard opening like that, I'm going to go 3 gates first to make sure that if they do end up doing a 4-gate and like bio push, for instance, that I am completely prepared and have enough units out to defend. My partner's going to be going for tanks, so if I ended up going straight into robo and I didn't get 3 gates first, my partner actually might end up dying as a result, because his siege mode might not be done until closer to 7 minutes, maybe even 7:30 if it's a little bit delayed, and that's a little bit too long to wait if you're facing a 4-gate, because most 4-gates are going to hit right at around, I would say 6 to maybe 6:30 into the game. I'd say if you have a stim bio push coming along with it, it's going to be a little bit closer to 6:30 or 7 minutes in, just because stim takes a little bit of time to research. But as you're going to see over here, he did a fast expansion, which we actually didn't notice until the game was over. And his partner just doing 3 gates in a robo, similar to myself. And as soon as my robo gets done here, I ended up getting a robotic support bay. And I'd say in between this time I actually ended up scouting up with a stalker, and I was able to notice that he had, I believe, about that many units, like 1 marauder and a couple of marines. So I decided, alright, well, they might do some kind of stim timing push, and we were kind of surprised that they didn't. And either way I was like, well, once I get 2 colossus we'll end up pushing them. And that's kind of your magic number. When you have 2 colossus in range, that's going to make a pretty big difference. So my partner and I have been gas feeding us back and forth a little bit. When he was initially trying to get his siege mode and starport up, I fed him a little bit of gas, and then now I ended up asking for gas in return when I actually need it for my colossus. It's fine to go a bunch of zealot here, because obviously I don't have a lot of gas to spare, because I want to make sure that I can get colossus out as quickly as possible. If you do this build properly, if you have colossus and tanks, you're going to push about 10 minutes into the game. If, for instance, you're doing it with just tanks and immortals, you can do it around 7:30 to about 8 minutes into the game. So that's why an immortal and tank push is sometimes a little bit more potent, just because it hits a little bit earlier. So let's see if I have any other scouting information. Yep, I believe this is our response that we just decided to push out right here. Partly because I have 2 colossus, but also because we ended up seeing the Protoss expand. So my partner's just going to spread out his tanks as much as possible. And then I'm just going to have my colossus. My main goal in this fight is going to be try and target down the bio, because those are the most clumped up units of all. And as you can see, they fall pretty quickly. And with them overcommitting that 1 colossus, they lost a lot of units. And with marines, gateway units, we were able to clean up their immortals, their tanks, and their marines. So then this is all you need to do at this point. Just be kind of patient. Obviously if you kill like most of their forces, move your tanks up more aggressively, but otherwise just kind of leapfrog up slowly, and then use the colossus when their shields regenerate to pick off enemy tanks. And while we're doing this, we're going to end up expanding. You want to try and place this down as soon as you push out, if possible, but we were a little bit too focused on the fight here, so we didn't get it down right away. But still, this expand will be up roughly around 14 minutes into the game. Normally you want to get it up and finished by 12 to 13 minutes, just so you're not too far behind if you aren't able to kill one of their expands immediately. And he's still sticking with immortals at this point. He really should have switched to colossus, just because with all these marines here, sometimes the tanks don't always do the job on their own. And also, for instance, if my partner keeps his marines back and just protects his own tanks, then the marines end up just chewing through all of these armor units right here. Because immortals and stalkers not exactly the best unit against marines. And the game's just about over here, but as you can see, Marines extremely strong against this kind of composition where you have immortals in there, and they put in a valiant effort, but unfortunately it's not quite enough. Alright, so I hope you guys can kind of see how a Colossus tank push can be effective, especially if one player opens up with primarily bio units. And in the next game I'm going to get into just doing a immortal tank push, which comes a little bit sooner, and it's another option that you can do against say a Protoss Zerg team if the Protoss expands quickly, or just any team in general if they expand quickly. Alright, just give me 1 sec and I'll have the next game loaded up. Welcome back for part 2. In this game we're going to have a Zerg and Protoss team that we're going up against, and once again we're going to be doing a tank push, but in this case the Zerg does a 15 hatch and expand first, so we decide that we're going to do a little bit earlier of a push because waiting for Colossus might take us a little bit too long and the Zerg's expansion might pay off. Or else even, you know, if you do a 10-minute push against the Zerg, they might sometimes get Mutilask out, which then all of a sudden you get stuck defending your base, or the push becomes all in because you have nothing at home defending. So, just once again, scouting on 9. My partner is going to be doing a 1-1-1 build. If you end up reading my guide, you're going to see that in there. Or else you can find it online in many different places. But it's basically a reactor barracks, quick factory, and getting tanks as soon as possible. In this game, I believe my partner doesn't actually get the starport, but either way, he ends up getting a factory quick, and we're going for tanks, immortals, and we're going to have an observer with our push. So there's going to be one thing that's going to be a little bit different in this game. We're able to get a lot of scouting information this time around. Since there's a 15 hatch as an expansion, I know that this game around I'm not actually going to need to get 3 gates before I start teching up a little bit. So I ended up getting second gas a little bit quicker, also to partly feed my ally, just so we can get a couple more tanks out a little bit quicker in this game. And in preparation for a little bit later to make sure that if they ended up destroying this wall, we have some way of blocking it off and not having to worry about counterattacks. We actually ended up blocking here as well. Alright, I believe my next building. Yep, and there we go. I got a robo, got my second gas a little bit quicker. Now, at this point, we don't actually know that the Protoss expand. This is a bit of a mistake by them. It's a little greedy to do double expansion because unless if one of us expands, they're actually going to have a much smaller army size. The Zerg is really the only player that can really expand early and not be behind in units. It's definitely too greedy trying to have a double expand, especially when you have a tank and a mortal gateway push is coming. Because as you can see here, my warp gate is done. He's got 1 tank, and after about another minute here, so close to 8 minutes, somewhere between about 7:30 and 8 minutes, we're going to be doing a push out. And I have a proxy pylon set up. This is from my initial scout that I sent in and gathered information. And it's a good idea just to keep them live, because sometimes it's a pain to try and get a proxy pylon across the map if they have links, because if you're not paying attention to your probe, they might pick it off in transit somewhere. So as soon as my partner had 2 tanks done and his siege mode, we're pushing out. And as you can see, it's right around 8 minutes in. And you guys are going to see that even though this Protoss player here is going to end up getting 1 Colossus out, it's not going to do a whole lot because the tanks outrange the colossus at this point. Until you get range with colossus, they really aren't going to counter this kind of army. And even if you do get range, sometimes you'll find when you pull back the marines, he'll get in range of the tanks. Then sometimes the immortals can also get a couple shots in. And immortals and stalkers do pretty well against colossus. So at this point, we're just kind of leapfrogging in. We're going to take up a little bit of position. And once we take out this expansion, we're going to end up moving to this low ground here because you can actually hit the mineral line by doing so. Just keep the army tab open so you guys can kind of see what army size everybody has. So you can see that the red Protoss, since he expanded, he's behind in army, not tremendously, but enough that it's going to make a bit of a difference in this fight. Because you really cannot commit any more to economy when you're trying to defend this kind of push, because a Terran Protoss push with Immortal and tank is just super strong. Because the Marines cut down the Lings pretty efficiently, tanks take care of clumped up units. You can see that their supply drops really quickly. Granted, he could have had that Colossus take down those force fields, but either way, you're going to notice that my partner and I both have a ton of supply left. So you guys can kind of see that Marauder Hellion isn't the only potent push against Zerg team when they expand. So doing Tank Immortal is also extremely powerful. Alright guys, well, I hope you can kind of see how effective this kind of timing push can be. Basically, these are the kind of two strategies that I do most commonly with my partners and when we get Terran and Protoss. Oftentimes we'll do one player gas feeding the other, either for Colossus or tanks. And sometimes we'll expand as well, but usually the other team ends up expanding, so doing some kind of push like this ends up killing off most teams pretty efficiently. Not to mention that we can usually expand behind it, although in this case we did not, but we had the money for it. I think it was more that we just wanted to make sure we were completely committing to this attack, because after we killed their first army off, there was really no need to expand. Alright, well thanks for watching guys, and I'll have some more videos uploaded for you soon. Thanks.